calls across the nation to defund the police.
To end policing as we know it.
Off the charts violence in New York City. 11 people shot in just 8 hours on Sunday.
This is about the police officers who every single day put on that uniform and they run towards danger when we run away from it.
What's up? Getting up. Welcome to Players Top, the number one show where police meet society and culture. Man, it's been great. Get off on Monday. Oh, was that? Is Andrea with us? What's up? You there? Probably not. She's got the dial-up internet that we're always so used to. Hello. Tonight's show is brought to you by Manscaped.com. Manscaped.com. It's that time of the year, man. Spring is among us. Spring is coming. Your little pubes are springing up. Get them taken care of with Manscaped.com. We also got Ghostbed.com tonight /Wolfpack. Sleep so good, it's scary. We'd have a lot less true crime in this world if everybody slept on a ghost bed. If you want to support the show, as always, you can like and hammer the hammer like button and subscribe on our YouTube. If you're an audio listener, give us a 5-star rating and review on wherever you listen to a podcast. We'd really appreciate that. And then we also have our Patreon account, which we just uploaded 2 really amazing shows this week. And that went out to our Patreon and our paid YouTube subscribers. And I know that everybody on the team is putting lots of content up on Patreon. And thank you guys so much for all the subscribers. Tonight's show is the Anaqua Springs murders. It was a tragedy in Texas. Am I saying that right? How do you say
Anaqua.
that? How do you say Anaqua Springs murders, tragedy in Texas. Anaqua. I think if I say it 3 times correctly, I won't screw it up the rest of the night. But yes, this was a tragedy I have in Texas. It's a really sad story. Springs, yeah. Before we dive into it, is there any true crime news that you want to update us on?
Yeah. Not a whole lot. One thing that I'm going to get into probably this weekend on Patreon is there has been now some sort of a bizarre link. Do you guys remember when Eric and I covered the Bill and Peggy Stevenson case? That was quick recap. The older couple, happy married couple. She played organ for the church, etc. And they would house, or they didn't house, but they would host truckers like in this little trailer and do kind of like a drive-by worship. So when tractor trailers and such were coming in town for deliveries, they could pop in and have what they were found horrific in their home, but there were crimes turned around to face the wall. There was just a whole lot of weird stuff, and we also don't know a lot else about the crime scene. They've been very tight-lipped about it. What was another case they were very, very tight? The main authority about was Delphi, right? So bizarrely enough, there is some sort of connection in the past few weeks we found out between Delphi, Abby and Libby on the bridge, and Bill and Peggy Stevenson. So
what?
They were only a few years apart in occurrence. And so they want to be sure to say that, like, when they say a coincidence or a similarity, they don't necessarily mean that Richard Allen, who is currently in prison while he awaits trial murder of Abby and Libby, they don't mean that he is necessarily being do with being the murderer of Bill and Peggy, but there was specific evidence to both crime scenes that they feel like there might be it's like mind blown. I don't even know. Wow. So we'll get more into that. I know we'll get a bit more into that. Say what?
Is the one guy still our main suspect?
Yeah, if they've implicated anyone, or if they have anyone else on their radar, they let us know. They also are keeping it a very open investigation and keeping court documents sealed. So, which could be the case even if he is the only one they're looking at. But they've more than once mentioned that they essentially aren't ready to. It doesn't look like they're just packing up the books and waiting to charge this guy. It almost feels like they're potentially looking for another suspect, but who's to say?
I've always said there was 2 in the Delphi murders. I think if we go back to the other episode, I said I mean, I'm pretty sure I've always said there's
Yeah.
got to be more than one dude. In that case, man, that is that is some crazy breaking news, because we covered the Peggy case, we covered the Delphi murder case, and the two of those being linked together, that is definitely mind blown type news. There's a lot of mind blowing news this week, though. God bless. There was a lot of true crime news too.
A lot of weird stuff going on.
A lot of weird stuff going on.
A lot of true crime.
Anybody else?
Anybody else also, real quick. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Bam Margera is missing. Bam Margera.
Is he still?
Yeah, he's still on the run. They got warrants out for his arrest, but they haven't found him yet.
Oh, Bam! I was gonna show y'all ever since, because we did that silly doppelganger show that time with our little conspiracy, but we've had so much fun with that ever since I put up my Stanley doppelganger, the Florida Stanley from The Office. I swear that was that guy. That was so bizarre. But people keep sending me doppelgangers, so you guys have got to see this one that I got sent today. If I
for all of our listeners, you guys won't get to see this, so we'll post it up on our Instagram. Andrea, I know
for sure. So check this, guys.
But you know that you can email me these things, right? And then I can post them on the computer like we do for every other show on the network, and it looks really, really professional. Because nobody can see that. Not with your bullshit internet.
Yeah, I like doing it like this.
A whole bunch of pixels. It looks like it's a really fat guy or something, like a really out of shape dude. Can't see. No. But
it was,
like I said,
The Rock and his doppelganger, who is a police officer.
Oh, it's 2023 though. You could always text me that before the show, and I could professionally put that up there for you anytime, free of charge. I don't even charge for that. But speaking of charge, David J dropped us 20 bones. Ryan Olison, Ryan Oloiso, fucking dude, I don't know your name, dude. He gave us $10. So thank you guys so much.
Well, that's very kind.
For doing that. It is very kind. It is very kind. We've actually got tons of new equipment coming. Everybody.
And I saw that David J said that it was for my HVAC is actually going to be installed tomorrow. It was supposed to be today, but evidently my HVAC guy, right when he was supposed to be here, got tickets to a hockey game, so he didn't come.
Man,
that's cool though.
So your HVAC guy in Raleigh has become flaky. That's interesting. Flaking out on you from Raleigh, poor guy. Expected better of that guy.
Flaking out.
Liked him. I really like that guy a lot. Really liked him. It's pronounced Alioso. Drew Breezy corrected me. Thank you, Drew. I have no idea. I still don't know how to pronounce that name, nor will I ever pronounce his name correctly.
I didn't see it.
Thank you, Ryan. All
right.
So what do we?
So let's talk about some things that happened.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, we're going to talk about some things that happened in 2019, because that's when this case took place. As I was going back through things that were kind of big, but we try to keep it kind of a little bit light and fun. And there wasn't a whole lot going on. Became cool. Like if we're leading with so CBD, like oil and products and things like that, started to become really more prevalent and talked about. This was the year that the random Starbucks cup was left on set of Game of Thrones. Do y'all remember that? Nothing. Lizzo came to rise.
Ooh, yeah.
Literally nothing I care about. Reunion of the Jonas Brothers.
Gross.
It was the end of the Taylor-Katie feud. I'm not sure if anybody does that. Was that 2019?
I think so. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it probably was. It was right before I moved.
Yeah.
Nothing. Nobody here. Oh, this was though the year of Jesse Smollett was 19.
Oh, Jesse Smollett.
Or Smollett.
Oh, yay. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, 2019 is not that.
Smiley.
It's not that
And
far
then,
back. You don't have to really go back in time to. Matter of fact, you can just erase 2019 to present, and I wouldn't give a fuck. Not a lot I want to remember. Like COVID,
right? So 2019 was the
a lot of
first
bad shit.
case of coronavirus.
Yeah. Yeah, Epstein. That was that whole fucking thing. Yeah, nothing
I
really.
mean, that was
good's
on the
happened
heels of
since then.
everything being shut down just a
I
few months
like it
later.
better when we have cases in the 90s and we go back to the 90s and remember all the things that happened in the 90s because there's a lot of good stuff in the 90s.
Agreed.
Even the wars were better in the 90s.
Yes. All right. Well, let's talk.
What?
What was?
Even wars were better in the 90s. We even won more wars.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to talk about the case. This is, I try to do, sometimes I'll do big, crazy cases that don't necessarily have a ton of light on them, especially if they're, I say somewhat unsolved, because sometimes there seems to be a determination, but then an investigation is ongoing. So we may not have clear-cut answers. And I enjoy those. So I've actually been in contact with a nonprofit recently who is actually going back and looking at and working this case currently as well. So it's pretty interesting. I didn't know of it. It's from around the San Antonio, Texas area. If you're from around there, you may be much more familiar. I'm sure it was really big news. Eventually, it did get on Inside Edition, I believe, and a couple of more more national platforms. But anyway, so this one didn't make it huge nationally unless you were really diving into crime stuff. So let's talk a little bit. We have the two people we're going to talk about most are a man and a woman, Nicole Olson and Charlie Wheeler. All right. Again, this was the events of this take place ultimately in August of 2019, or excuse me, January of 2019. So Nicole Olson and Charlie were a couple, but they had very, very differing backgrounds. So let's talk about that a little bit. Charlie grew up with decent money, nice houses, boats, vehicles, all those kinds of things. His dad was in the rodeo circuit to a certain degree. His dad was a team roper. All right. So then Charlie went on to do about 3 years or so on the circuit, also as a team roper, followed in his dad's footsteps. When he got through with that, he took his earnings because he made a decent living from that. And he kind of became an entrepreneur. He started a few different businesses. Let's see, YouTube app. So he opened a security company called On the Go, and this was in 2008. He was only 21 at that time. So it's pretty notable, right? He's already starting his own company. He sold that company about 3 years later and made kind of a subsidiary to that called On the Go Services. He eventually got around $8 million in revenue for that business. So
how much?
He was doing just fine. A few other things. He had gotten into $8 million. He had gotten into oil at some point as well. So he had like this security gate company, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And then, of course, some oil stuff. He's down in Texas. So he was doing plenty well for himself. Nicole, on the other hand, by the time she met Charlie, she was doing well, but that was after beating a lot of odds. So when 7 years old, her father died suddenly 2 days before Christmas of a heroin overdose. She was very, very close to her father. This, in turn, she will later say, caused her mother to become an alcoholic. Really just drank herself essentially to death. So what happens is that when her dad passes away, when she's 15, she has her first child. So she's 15. She has a son that she names Skylar. When she is 16, I think that we can start to assume for all intents and purposes that her mother's not quite as present at this point. So when she was 16, she actually marries the guy. of course, this ends in divorce pretty soon after. Then she has a few years go by, and when she is, I believe, 20, she had her, would that be right? Yep. She had her next child, who is a daughter named Alexa. So she has little Alexa. She gets married to this guy. They were together for a little while, ended in divorce. But that same year that she has Alexa, her mother dies suddenly of cardiac arrest due to her alcohol intake. This means that now she has a 13-year-old brother that she's for. So she is only 20 years old. And in this time, she has had 2 marriages, divorces, 2 children. Both parents are dead. And now she's taken in her little brother to take care of. So a lot is gone. Moving on some time, she's no longer with her second child's father, Alexa's father. And she meets another man. I don't believe actually ever get married, but they do conceive a child, a little girl named London. So ultimately speaking, when this case culminates to the end that we're going to talk about, Nicole was 37, Alexa was 16, and London was 10 years old. Skylar, her oldest son, was off to college at this point. So that's kind of where we're at when everything concludes here. So she's got all these small children, had multiple relationships, but she kind of started to get on her feet. And little by little, she started to work as she was a hairstylist, kind of started moving up in different, boutiques and salons to kind of nicer ones and ones. She winds up not really having too much of a trouble. Eventually, she was beautiful. You'll see. I'll put it on. She looked like any Instagram model. Beautiful, beautiful woman. Her daughters were drop dead gorgeous girls with like aspirations to become. One of them wanted to be a physician. The other one had, I think, talent at singing. So she was really doing well and learning to provide for herself and really kind of getting out of that tough life, honestly, that she had earlier on, the first half of her life. So that's the difference in Charlie and Nicole in terms of their upbringing. That's kind of where they were when they met in
And how old is she at this point?
2016. Now, when they meet in 2006, she'd been, I believe, like 34, and he was a junior. He was like 5 or 6 years younger than her when they met. She actually had a company where she, kind of like a little side hustle she had going on, and like jewelry and watches. Say, I'll put the pictures up. This wasn't like all that crap that people at work want you to come take a look at on a Tuesday afternoon or your shift. Nice stuff, high-end stuff. And so she would model these watches and jewelry on Instagram, and Charlie, she caught his eye, and so he slid in those DMs a message, and they started talking. They hit it off. First time they actually hang out together after they had chatted for a little while, she was going to.
Remember in Zoolander when the hand model scene of Zoolander, where he's like, "I recognize those hands." You remember that? Wonder if Charlie was like, "Man, I recognize those hands. Let me slide into those DMs, dude. Got some nice hands."
I recognize them. My favorite was actually in Seinfeld when George was a hand model. Do you remember that? Did you watch Seinfeld?
Yeah.
Don't touch the hands.
Don't touch the hands.
Anyway, so so he gets in there and they chatting, and they are starting to enjoy each other's conversation, and so she invites him. She was going to this kind of well-to-do resort area for a conference for I guess for her jewelry. Maybe it was like a seller's conference type thing, and so she invited him to come along with her. So that's the first time they actually spend time together. So he goes along with her and this stuff, selling the jewelry, and so they hang out. So this friend of hers, Vanessa, is important because as Charlie and Nicole's, Vanessa was kind of there from the start. So she was hanging out with them together, seeing them together. watching his behavior and her behavior when they were together. And that's important because we don't have a lot otherwise to go off of. Remember, she doesn't have family that can speak on her behalf. She doesn't have, you know what I mean? Like her two daughters are, well, you'll find out, but they're not around anymore, and she doesn't have a mom or dad. So, that's that. So she and Charlie hit it off. They pretty quickly become monogamous in 2017. So 1 year later, they move into this home that Charlie has just bought. She and her two daughters move into this sprawling home. So it was 4,500 square feet, but it was custom, a very custom home. Think affluent Texas. So you've got like it looks like a little grotto and like stucco. It's a couple of floors, but even just the layout of the home, a lot of cobblestone, a beautiful pool that looks like a natural pool, the ones with like stones all around, and everything just
I think
flows into
Lázaro
everything else.
Lopez actually
Gorgeous
bought that
place.
house.
I think
I think that's where Lázaro Lopez lives now.
I think he did not. You think so?
Oh yeah, I've been there. I've slept at Lázaro's house. It's
Haven't.
so nice.
Yeah, if you'd like, always pull the video back up where you're laying on the floor and watching the Boone Island Boys.
That wasn't me. That was a deep fake.
That was before deepfakes. I think. Okay, so anyway, he buys this house. I think he purchased it for right at 1.2 2.7 acres, 4-bedroom, 4.5 bath. You can find it on Realtor now if you want. It's off the market, but a cool community. And like I said, it's on 2.7 acres, right? So it's one of those where every house has that kind of acreage, and that's important too. The houses were not right on top of each other. You may not hear what's on in your neighbor's home, okay? If you're on the farther end of that land plot. So if you're close to 3 miles away or 3 acres, it might be a little bit more difficult. So this wasn't your normal cookie cutter subdivision. This was a gated community with a guard at the gate. There's cameras. There's, all the security is there. This all matters. So moving forward, they're together for about a year. They get this house. Don't let me confuse that. Not they. He buys the house, and we find out later that when one of her friends, Vanessa, was over to visit, Vanessa made a point that, or Vanessa said something to Nicole, like, he's treating you like a guest. Like Vanessa was starting to kind of get a bad taste about the way Charlie spent. She was to notice this, and she said, he treats you like a guest here. And keep in mind, she said, well, I am a guest, it's Charlie's home. So just some weird things set up there that makes you kind of wonder a little bit about her, choices with men or the way she treats that relationship. There's another time Vanessa they go to a game. They go to a Spurs game, a basketball game. And Charlie Nicole, and he asks to speak with her. When he gets the phone with Vanessa, he tells her how she should feel lucky that he's allowing Nicole to go with her, that he trusted her, and that's the only reason Nicole was able to hang out with her. So we're seeing that he's starting to exhibit some tendencies for sure. And then there are like other nuances. So like the daughters, keep in mind, these weren't toddlers. These girls were teenagers, or one was approaching teenage years. The other one was. So like one of the times Vanessa was over there was a crumb that he found on the floor. He kind of got unreasonably angry about the fact that it was on the floor and kind of blamed the girls, saying that Alexa or London had dropped it there. That, they didn't. And he tells her, he demands that she on the floor to pick it up. And she does. So it sounds like she's, a bit subservient to his demands. She doesn't seem to be pushing back, at all. So then, like, there's just a few instances like this. So there's another instance where they went to and they were ordering a drink somewhere, gonna have a cocktail for dinner, and her friend said that basically she left before she'd even finished her drink because he started blowing up her phone and stopped calling. And
No,
her girlfriend's
can
telling
I
her,
ask you a
like,
question?
this isn't healthy. Like, yeah, of course.
For me, I've always said this. If I was broke and I married a really, really rich, hot woman, I would basically be subservient. I'd do whatever she wants, rub her feet. I would deal with all the bullshit because I want to get that because I want to live in luxury. I don't want to be a peasant. Do you think? And I've heard girls joke about it before. I've heard girls say that kind of stuff. I'll do whatever. If he's got money, I'll do whatever. I don't care what he looks like. And we've seen, like, really old dudes marry really young, pretty girls. Obviously, that's their take. Do you think that was
Right.
kind of her role? Do you think she accepted that role? Like, you know what I mean? It's not like she's probably got a lot of self-confidence. I mean,
I
she's
think
kind of on her third marriage. You know what I'm saying?
right. I think a couple of I think they were equal in the looks department. She was gorgeous, he's a handsome fella. So they together made a very attractive couple. So it wasn't like he was some, schlub that just happened to have money in that sense. Now, okay, I think that she was fine on her own. I'm sure the money he had and provided, you know what I mean? Like, that doesn't hurt. I'm sure that was helpful in the situation. But it sounds like at first, sounds like a very book situation that turns into, if not domestic violence, at least like a mental abuse in that sense. Because at the beginning, it sounds like there was just love bombing. Like, he was wonderful and everyone loved her so much, and it was all, which is pretty textbook. That's how this goes. And then it starts to, she was the perfect one to fall prey to this as well, because her father had died right in front of her at 7 years old. I mean, all these things look back on in her history. Clearly,
Right.
she was having a tough time. I don't want to say men choices and what weren't lasting. So if he is like just love bombing the hell out, she feels like this is the most wonderful thing in the world, and he happens to have money. Sure, that's icing on the cake, right? But I mean, she didn't seem like the one that was necessarily like was out for. I think that she thought he loved her, and then he starts these manipulative things and starts to really gain mental control. So to answer your question, there's a few things there. I also think that it's say like he's ugly, but he's got money. Like, when people are joking about that, because this has become like an emotional manipulation. Like, I think that she's in the game as much as he's playing it.
Right.
Know that it's a contract that she's staying with him for money and allow treat her this way. So, so he blows the phone up. She tells her girlfriend, fine, no, like, he's not going to stop. So she left. And then just one other instance I'll give you would be that it was their anniversary, and they went into town, into Galveston, and they'd gotten this nice place, and they were going to stay, and get in a big fight while there. And he leaves and takes her phone. So, like, literally leaves town to go back to where they're from. So he left her in a different town where she doesn't live without her own phone, and goes on home. So she eventually calls one of her friends, uses a phone there to call her friend Monica. Monica comes and picks her up. And again, is, like I said, trying to explain to Nicole that this isn't healthy. Like, this isn't how a relationship should be. This isn't something you should be dealing with. Like, this isn't okay.
Why do girls do
Basically,
that though? Like, why do girls
Nicole just,
always?
kind of left it at that. And
Why do girls and guys? And because I see it a lot owning a distillery. Like, I mean, it's pretty obvious it's not working. I feel like if you have more than one of those fights, like more than one fight where somebody takes somebody's phone or takes something or just disappears or just walks away. I mean, honestly, I think if you have one of those, I mean, they're huge red flags. But like there definitely shouldn't be two. That's not a healthy relationship at that point. And if that's happened to you twice, like even with this whole Bam Margera thing, like
Right.
those aren't healthy behaviors. And you should definitely know that if that's happening in your relationship, you guys need counseling, or you need some kind of a therapy, or you need to just get your shit together, because that's not normal. But a lot of people, especially now, put up with, I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe not now, it's just because I'm old enough to see it, but like I feel like a lot of people tolerate, and I'm not talking about just like regular, I'm talking about like if your significant other walks out and takes your phone, that's a crime.
Well, and we know now, like we have a bit more, we've had, I think, more talks on this kind of thing, and we've had more research done, and we can see patterns. But I think that with people like this, now she had not been with him that long, but it starts so small. I think a lot of times that's what happens. The pendulum swings so small, and everyone is different personality-wise. That's why I said she was the perfect.
Let me ask you this. I know there's a delay. That's why I'm having to talk over you. Sorry, for those of you who are just listening, there's like a 10-second delay. So I talk when she's not talking, but it doesn't appear to be talking until she's talking again. So I'm not trying to talk over her. But let me ask you this, Andrea. If you were dating a dude not very long and having kids like you do, and you got in a fight in Galveston, Texas, and he took your phone, would you put up with that one time? Like
I'm getting the hell out of there.
That once. Yeah,
No.
I'm pretty sure that would be the last time you guys see each other. Like, you've broken up with dudes for way less.
Yeah, I put up with it. But I'll tell you what, I don't want to shade it to sound a certain kind of way. I've never been in a relationship like that. I do know that for women, especially over the course of a long time, little things can start to happen that they can look back at later and like, how did I get here? What would I behavior be okay? X, Y, or Z. Things can happen on a very slow pendulum. With her, this seemed to happen a bit quicker, but also she was to be the one to fall into his lap for this, because she was, I do think, she was strong and she was independent, but that doesn't change her past traumas and the things that had happened to her. So, I mean, I don't know who's she would have kept up with it much longer had she. So instances, and now I'm not trying to. I will be fully transparent here that Charlie has not been prosecuted or charged with anything. His behavior, trying to sway your think a certain kind of way. I'm just laying out some facts, and I'm going to talk about some of her past behaviors as well. And then at the end, we're going to figure out what happened, the tragedy that ensued, and kind of what we think about that. Prior to meeting Charlie had quite of getting locked up. Usually it was really not any time served. A lot of these cases were thrown out. Alcohol, he was known to be, he got charged with public intoxication at a bar, because when he would drink, he would become so easy to handle. He had a couple DUIs, DWIs. Those were both wrong. Not sure why. He was not a good drinker, and he would just get kind of a ladies' man money at a very young age. So he's, buying these fancy cars and going to these bars and staying out all night. Kind of causing a scene in the background, and he would get in some fights like that. Not so like still here. Hear me?
Yeah, guys, I'm gonna do an ad read right now while she tries to fix on her audio really fast. I know that nobody can understand a word that she's saying right now. Gentlemen, if you didn't already know, it's tax season here in the United States, and you know what that means. It means that Manscaped is here to make sure your paperwork is done and your boys downstairs are having fun. Make sure you spend your tax return money on important things this year, like family, good internet, friends, and ball deodorant, just like the 8 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped. By going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with the code Wolfpack. By the way, listen, I absolutely love Manscaped. I Manscaped all the time. You know what keeps this mullet healthy is that Manscaped shampoo and conditioner. I'm going to use my tax return for another Manscaped package. I get one every year. And now I got the 4.0. I had the 2.0. Now I got the 4.0, the little hedge trimmer and the light. Love that thing. From head to toe, make sure you get your money's worth this April. The Performance Package 4.0 is the ultimate bundle you need to reinvent yourself and your confidence. The Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer is the star of the show, offering precise shave on all your wildest hedges. Equipped with the LED light, you can navigate in and out of those difficult areas with ease. Did we mention that it's waterproof as well? Because it is. More exciting news: the Performance Package 4.0 now includes the Manscaped's brand new Weed Whacker 2.0 ear and nose hair trimmer. This bad boy has been totally revamped with a new and improved blade and motor, and dare I say, is the best ear and nose hair trimmer ever. Because I'll say it. Dare me to say it. I'll fucking say it. Cordless, rechargeable, and comes with skin-safe technology, which helps reduce nicks, snags, and tugs. It's scary at first, guys. It's scary at first when you're going down there with one of these things. But I assure you, I have been shaving my balls now for over a year with this stuff. Haven't nicked myself once. You can get the Crop Preserver, the Crop Reviver, which is a spray-on toner for your bowels. The Crop Preserver is an anti-chafing ball deodorant. Keeps those balls from sticking to your leg. If you're venturing out to Disney World or any of the other Universal Studios, put on the ball deodorant so you don't have to walk like a weirdo, like you just got off a horse because you're trying to get your sack off your inner thighs. These are man problems. Listen, Charlie probably had these problems, and that led to why he was such an asshole, because he didn't take care of his shit below. For all my guys out there with a little scruff, Manscaped now has beard products. Our boy Jonathan Bates from Com Center is using that right now. So if you like the way his beard looks, how it's combed and brushed, and it's got all the nutrients in there, it's looking strong. It's a strong looking beard. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the promo code Wolfpack at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping. Promo code Wolfpack at manscaped.com. Just don't get your money back this year. Get your swagger back too with Manscaped. Let's go back because you were fully digital and nobody could hear what you're saying for probably like the last 1 minute before I jumped in.
Okay. We all good?
We're good. Send it.
Okay. So what I was saying is that just basically that Charlie had a history of being belligerent when he drank. And so he had a couple of DUIs or DWIs. They were eventually thrown out. He had was charged with public intoxication while he was at a bar because he was so drunk. Not uncommon for him. Times starting when he was in his early 20s, maybe even prior to that, to be fair. He was, like I said, kind of a playboy. He loved money. He loved women. He loved cars. And he had, at a very early age, he had a lot of it. So he had a good old time. But just know that when he drank, he was not, he couldn't quite handle that. He wasn't such a nice guy when that happened. Now, Nicole was 14, where she was charged with domestic violence. She had a boyfriend at the time. It wasn't one of the fathers of these kids. She had some boyfriend. She was out somewhere, asked him to come pick her up. And when he said he couldn't, she got another ride, went to his house, saw he had something about another woman on his phone, and slapped him, like open hand slap, caused a bruise to his face. He called the cops. He also had a scrape on his knee. He said that eventually he did have to tackle her and kind of like restrain her because she was hitting him, and she had been drinking. So we know that she and Charlie don't have the best history when it comes to this kind of thing. Now, I'm not saying it's something she did all the time or hurt other people. There was no other charge, but with that was 14, that did happen. Nothing came of it. He decided to not show up in court or continue to press charges, and it was dismissed. But that is, a little piece of her history that's worth mentioning. So let's move right along. and talk about what happened on of January 2019, or the morning of the 10th. So police get a call on January 10th, 2019, around 9 something in the morning. And it's Charlie Wheeler. And he's saying, and we can't, I would play this all, guys, but we don't, that still haven't released it. Charlie is calling and saying, like, help, come to the house. And his verbiage is, there's been a suicide. So, police get there on scene, and when they get there, they find on the second floor of the home, first of all, Charlie is out front, rock wailing and sobbing. Going on the second floor, they find 3 bodies of Nicole, her daughter Alessa, and her daughter London. They are all lying in a foyer area upstairs. They have all been, they're all deceased from gunshot wounds, at least is what's apparent. Initially, there's blood smeared everywhere, and that's the scene. So when they go back downstairs and outside to speak with Charlie, they try to kind of separate him. I think they go on and take his wallet and his phone at that point and put him in a car just to talk to him, to get the story, to see what's happening. And they put it in the report that while he was so audibly sobbing and visibly shaken, his eyes were not red and there were no tear stains. He wasn't crying. There were no tears. So something that they found interesting to start with. So they talked, and his story is that, let me mention, when they assessed the body, maneuvers could be done, they realized, in fact, that was definitely not the case. Not only were they dead, but rigor had already set in. So if you're not familiar, rigor to hearing it is a body once you die, it's temporary, and it has kind of a timeline. So rigor tends to set in generally the face muscles first, within a couple of hours. But then that kind of spreads through the body down into the limb. It's a procession of a process. It's so up to, let's say quite a few hours in, probably at least, that they had been dead when police are on scene. And it could be more. Now, eventually, within 24 hours or less, things start to loosen back up, and then you start to get a very different consistency. But so you don't stay like that forever. But so they were definitely, rigor had set in. So they had been dead for at least, let's say 4 hours, probably more. So he says that when they ask, well, what happened? Like, how are you just now noticing this? When they realized how long they had been gone, he said, well, I just got here. We got in a big argument last night, and I left the home and stayed at my parents' house. So this is when, questions start coming in. Their bodies are taken in, autopsies are performed. They all had passed away from gunshot wounds to the head. The one difference is that London also had a gunshot wound to the neck. So she had the other two had one to the head. And then within about 4 days, they deemed double murder suicide and said that Nicole shot the girls and herself. The ME is the one who did the murder suicide, like I said, 4 days later. At first, detectives are kind of like, well, I mean, okay, that's horrible, it's tragic, but the families start to intervene, and they're saying there's absolutely no way. Now, we know that terrible things like this do happen, and families will often say there's no way, like she would never do that, or he would never.
Right. I feel like every family says that
in
for
this
every situation. Like,
they're all
for every situation, like even when like somebody gets killed by the police, like they're always like, oh, he was he was part of the choir, he was a drummer in the choir, he was going to college, they always say, they don't tell you that she's kept herself in domestic relationships off and on with several different baby daddies and, 3 different marriages. And you know what I mean? It's like, right. So it's like hard to go off of what everybody else says. It's like, what does the evidence show?
Exactly. And that's sadly, it's how it is, but we don't know. So this is still a situation. What out is basically all we do know. This is absolutely now considered, after a turn of events, an ongoing investigation still. And so they have absolutely not released anything much more than what I'm telling you now. So we don't even have 911 call out for review. We've heard what it says, or there are a few transcripts of partial, portions of it, but not the whole thing. So again, like I say, the wave saying there's no way this didn't happen this way. It doesn't make sense. Things were looking up, meaning she had appointments for the girls, like to get hair done that next week. And one of the girls was supposed to go to an America's Got Talent audition the next day. So they had these things to look forward to. It just wasn't adding up to families. So detectives do start to consider into this situation. I think that they can't say they got a bad feeling off but I think that just some hairs were raised. They had some suspicions, for a few different reasons.
Yeah.
As they start to invest, and time goes by, and basically within a year, they've overturned this and kicked it back to where they're going to fully investigate, and they are no longer kind of accepting, if you will, the verdict or the ruling that the cause of death was a suicide to mom. So there's been some issues or some antagonistic feelings between, when I say the families, I'm referring to the 2 fathers of Alexa and London. 2 fathers have had some issue with Salazar. He is the policeman that was in charge of all of this, in charge of these investigations. And he can be a little abrasive, but he ultimately said, they got FBI involved about a year later. He said, there's no way he said, if I say that it's a murder-suicide, then I'm saying that this woman killed her daughters. And he said, I just don't feel comfortable. I can't say that yet. He said, I don't feel like we've done the proper investigation to be able to say that that's what happened.
I feel like that gunshot residue could probably clear up a lot of this. Like, how much gunshot residue is on her upper arm? You know what I mean? It's not like somebody put a gun in her hand and then held it to her head and made her blast herself. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah, I feel like that would be the kicker there.
Well, and I was talking about that earlier today. And was told that that's not always super indicative of one thing or another, right? It's one of those that can be kind of funny because it's not always present the way it should be, or the pattern of it may not be super indicative of that alone. Now, I don't know what they've not told. They've told that they did.
If you blast off 5 rounds, because you had 3 kids, right? Right? 3 kids?
2.
She had 2 kids?
2 that were there.
2 that were there. So she shot 2 kids and then she shot herself twice. I mean, there's going to be substantial gunshot residue on her hand from taking all those shots, especially inside, without any other elements.
Well, so we know that they tested her and Charlie, gunshot for the residue, and they did a toxicology report. None of those results have ever been released to the public whatsoever. We don't know about her or the girls. We don't know. So that's all they've told us, is that this is what they've tested for, and we don't know the results, and this is how we found them, and that's all, right? So so ME says that about a year goes by. Like I said, they kick it back. Law enforcement kicks it back to say, nope, it's an open investigation, and here's why. Now, again, the daughters are Alexa and London. London was the 10-year-old. London's father has a bit of a different opinion than Alexa's father on the state of Nicole during this time. He thinks that he does think that this is what happened, what the Emmy said, but it's not that he faults her, but he's also faulting Charlie Wheeler and having a gun near her in his home when he knew that she was exhibiting erratic behavior. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. What happens is that I think it's approaching a year or two after the murders, both the fathers of London and Alexa file a civil suit against Charlie Wheeler. And they did this because the statute of limitations was starting to, I think they were concerned that it was going to expire. I guess based off if it was a suicide. So they go do this. They file this civil suit. We now have information that we didn't have before, right? So they're able to put things in this civil suit document that is new to us, meaning anybody looking into this in the public. We find out from that the phones that were placed prior to the murders or suicide or all of it, right? That throughout that day, Nicole talked to his mother, her own parents, she talked to her boyfriend's mom on the phone multiple times that day. I think upward of like 5 or 6 times. They got along great. Things were going good. She was explaining Charlie's mother was excited about the America's Got Talent audition for a day. Just everything was fine and looking up and seemed very normal and even keel. She talked to other friends and family members that day, which was the youngest daughter, London's father. She talked to him around 9:30, and at this point, she now is acting a bit different. She's saying, "Never mind, we're not going to do the auditions tomorrow. I'm actually going to wait and take her to voice license in the future." And he said that she was acting, just her voice, her tone was all over the place. She was erratic. Now, Charlie's mother said the same thing. She said that throughout the day, everything was fine. But that night, when she spoke with her, the last time she spoke with her, it was that she gave her the same story about America's Got Talent. That she just flipped a switch and things were very, very different. So, as time goes on, we know that night gets a little questionable in details, but as what we find out in the civil suit is that she had made her phone, let's say, made 5 phone calls around 11 o'clock that night. 5 was to Charlie's mother. Again, she had talked to her throughout the day. Was that she did not pick up, so she missed that call. The next 4 subsequently were to 911. Okay, so 11:10, 2 were at 11:11, and the 4th was made at 11:12. So in the span of 3 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, we have 4 911 now. And Drew to listen to for their comm center show, but when she makes these 911 calls, all 3 of them are hang-ups. Like they never connected ever. One did connect, but not for long enough. Dispatchers where to send units. The call back that one, but it was never answered. So they never could figure out where to go. So they never sent anyone.
I mean, I figured that if she shot herself twice, she shoots herself in the neck, and then she calls 911.
The dog shot twice.
What? Who was shot twice? It's
one of the daughters was shot twice.
One of the daughters was shot twice. All right, so she missed. Okay, so she didn't shoot herself twice.
Right.
So I wonder if she shoots the first girl first, hits her in the neck, figures she doesn't want this to go through. Now she's like, fuck, I can't believe I just shot my daughter in the fucking neck. Calls 911, is freaking out. It's like, don't call 911. Hang up. No, let's do call 911. No, that's a bad idea. Hang up on 911. And now she's got to go through with it.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't think so. I don't think that's the case.
I don't think
well,
that.
of
I don't think that a
course now
medical
his
examiner.
his feet were
Sorry, it's so hard to do this. With this stupid delay. I just, for me, in these types of cases, like nobody takes them lightly. No cop goes to a crime scene like this and then just like willy nilly. I know that the public likes to think that, but every cop is a detective. Every cop knows, like all cops become detectives. Like every detective that's ever lived was a cop first. So in order to be a good detective, you had to be a good cop. So, you know, the chances that you had a whole, I mean, it can happen. But the chances that you get a whole group of cops that go to a crime scene and then, you know, like they don't want it to be a murder suicide. They want there to be a murderer. Like they're trying to come up with any evidence that shows that this is a murder. They don't just walk into these kind of crime scenes. I mean, I can give you a quick example. When I was a cop, there was a car, a taxi cab driver called in that there was 2 dead people, and one guy was in the driveway of a subway, and the subway driveway came out onto a road called Traywick Road, and then there was a car about, I want to say 50 yards down the road from the body that was laying in the subway driveway, and the car was up on a curb near a stop sign with a dying woman in the passenger seat. And so when I was like the first, me and one other cop were like, we arrived at the same time, but we were both the first ones on scene. And the woman in the car, when I went around to see if she was okay, she was doing the whole gargle of death, just dying, was looking straight ahead. I couldn't get her to make eye contact with me. And there was like the frothing of the mouth. And so I knew she was dying. And so I ran up the hill to see what the other body's status was, because my other buddy was coming up. So I was like, cool, he can take care of this, and I'm going to go on to the next one. And I got to the next one, and that guy was dead too, but the bullet hole was like directly between his eyes. So immediately, murder. This is like a double murder. And we run it as a double murder. There was actually a club letting out, like maybe a block away, and a car came speeding through up to the crime scene. Saw that we hadn't even got the crime scene tape up yet, but he saw like that I had put flares out. He jammed on the brakes, lit up his tires, tried to turn around, tried to go through a parking lot. The parking lot dead ended, and we barricaded him in the parking lot. He wouldn't get out of his car. I ended up throwing him down. Recognize him as somebody that I've arrested in the past. He doesn't have an ID, but then he tells me the wrong name, and I know it's the wrong name. So now I'm linking this dude to the murder. I'm asking this guy about the murder scene, and then he tells me that there was a gang war and there was a gang fight, and that he thinks these 2 people are caught up in the gang fight. So now I'm being lenient to him because he's telling me all about a gang fight. And I'm passing all this information around. 2 K-9 cops and a whole bunch of SWAT officers race up to this known gang house that's about 3 miles up the road. They detain everybody on the front porch. We think that this gang is a big going. The whole thing goes from about 9:45 p.m. till about 4 o'clock in the morning. When we finally get the Popeye's chicken across the street, we finally get a runner to get us into the computer screens, into the cameras. Now, at this point, I think there was probably 6 guys on that porch that have been detained since like 9:45, 10 o'clock at night. I've got this other bozo that I've had a use of force on, that I've yanked out of a car, slammed onto the ground, buried his face into the concrete. And I've detained him, who I've gotten this whole story from. Lots of stuff going on, that this is a homicide scene. We go and look at the Popeyes video, and thank God there was video, and you see the whole thing. What happened was they stopped at the stop sign. You see the flash of the gun go off inside of the car. You see the door open, the guy get out of the car, the guy get back in the car. Then you see another flash of light. You see the guy fall out of the car because he didn't shut the door all the way. The car begins to creep forward because it's on a hill. It drags him into an awkward position. And then the car drifts out into the road and then slowly begins to go down the road all the way until 50 yards down the road where it hits a stop sign. And it comes to things. Now, there was no gun on scene when we got there. You keep watching the tape. A homeless man walks up, looks to his left, looks to his right, looks around to see if there's any cameras, goes up to the guy, checks the guy's pulse, runs to the car, looks like he's attempting to check her pulse, runs back to the guy, grabs the gun, sticks the gun in his pants, and is ghost until a taxi cab pulls up and then calls 911. So from 9:45 p.m. till 4 o'clock in the morning, we have ran this whole thing detaining gang members. So come to find out, the whole story was that this guy that I threw out of his car made all that shit up. He knew that they were gang members. He knew where they lived because the guy's from Raleigh. He's a rival gang member, just made all that shit up because he had warrants, multiple warrants out of several different cities, to include Durham in North Carolina. And so he was just like, man, if I start giving this guy information about these dead people, maybe I'll catch a break. Isn't that wild? So my point with all that is that it's harder for me. Like, I would have to have evidence. And the fact that they're not releasing a lot of stuff to the public probably shows that they probably did do the gunshot residue. She probably had a substantial amount on her hands. The toxicology report they're not talking about because they don't really need to. She was probably beyond wasted. And that's probably why the ME. And the only reason that they are reopening the case and everything is because they have to, because of civil suits and everything else. But they're not, they're not going to give out any other information. I mean, that's just my guess. But I find it very unlikely that they were just like, oh, yeah, murder, suicide. This bitch killed her kid. She was drunk and she killed her kids. I mean, there's got to be evidence.
Right. So, but what happened is once they reopened the case, now we've got some other people. So there's the nonprofit that I mentioned earlier in the evening called, and that's who I'm dealing with. So they're comprised of, actually, it's a pretty neat team of people seeing person cases, anywhere from detectives and lawyers, and then investigators, and all the way to like special or like FBI special agents. And so they are having this. And the one FBI agent that's been kind of handled is she feels very, very strongly that not suicide. Somebody someone is a doctor who examined the bodies, like, does this person, now we've had instances where we've talked about, in fact, I think it depends on the town. Sometimes it's the coroner, sometimes it's the medical examiner, but we've talked about it, and it might have, in fact, almost the Stephen Smith case was found in the road, but we've had some where, we weren't we didn't feel too confident in the ME's choice.
Right. Like, I'm not going off of the ME's like so much in this case as I would go after what the detectives found, because they would have had to have, it's not the ME, the one that's going to say suicide. It's going to be the detective that seals the whole house down. Look, I mean, working for Raleigh, and Raleigh's not like the biggest apartment, or nor it's the best or the greatest, but like, I mean, I had a woman that died of the flu. It was obvious she died of the flu. All of her medications were down. Like, there was overwhelming evidence that she died with the flu. We held that crime scene. I bet you we held that crime scene for 11 and a half hours, only for the detectives to say, yep, she died of the flu, because nobody is just going to write off she died with the flu. Like, every detective, nobody wants to put their name on something if it's not true. I mean, every cop, think about this. Like, if you're the detective that says murder, suicide, and you're not 100% sure, or at least 99.998% sure within a reasonable doubt that this is a murder, suicide, do you think that they want to live with that for the rest of their life? That a murderer got set free to only go out and murder other people? I mean, that's their biggest fear in life, that to do that. So I'm not really basing this off of the ME as much as I would say the detectives they had to have had evidence that it was a murder-suicide, not a hunch, not a, oh, I just feel like this guy was an asshole. I just feel like this guy didn't have any empathy.
Right.
Because what if that guy just really
So
hated that bitch?
they have said that he remains a person of interest.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have said that he remains a person of interest and it's being actively investigated as an open case. So my point is, if,
Right.
why would they be doing that if they didn't feel something too?
Yeah, they might.
You know?
I mean, like there might be some other evidence out there. I would just it's hard to know, right? Like it's hard to. Yeah, this is one of those cases.
Well, we don't have any evidence. That's the thing. We
Right,
just
we
don't.
don't- we
Or
don't have any
we
evidence.
don't.
We don't, but somebody has the evidence. And so it's it's hard for one of these cases to pick a side because, think about it too. Like, I'm sure you know somebody that's committed suicide, right? I take that as yes. I saw your mouth move, but I feel like
Say
we
that
all
last
know
part again.
suicide. You've had somebody commit suicide. Somebody that's committed suicide, right?
Right.
Now, have you ever heard of I feel like with every suicide case, there's always somebody that doesn't think it was a suicide, that thinks that there's more to that story. I mean, I can name 2 suicides off the bat right now that I've been very close to, that people
feel
have been
that
like,
way.
oh, I don't think they actually did it. I think there's more to that story. Even when my uncle committed suicide, the family was trying to blame it on a motorcycle gang. They were like, well, maybe a motorcycle gang, but I talked to
Yeah. I think
talked to go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I do think that many times the family is going to say that. That doesn't, surprise me at all. I just felt that for them to continue efforts and time and money and resources in investigating this, it makes me wonder, is there wonder what they might have that keep this going? So real quick, none of the cameras in the home were on that night. Pretty system there, and none of the cameras were on that night. There has been question on the fact that it is a gated community and that someone has to come and go. Was the guard there 24 hours a day or just during certain hours of the day or night? We don't know the answer to that. We don't know if it had a security gate. He used to own a security company. That's a far stretch, but I wonder if that was one of his products. There's just been a lot of the questions on,
he's got money too. He's got a lot of money. So people
there's
with a lot of
some
money
questions
can make,
on that aspect.
We've learned that with the Murdoch family as well.
Well, okay.
They were able to get away with a lot of stuff because they have a lot of money.
Right. So
it could be that.
So we think that, or the police asked for all the neighbors, that. They've not released anything they found on that. They are looking to want to get a warrant for geofencing. If you're not familiar, geofencing would be on the way you would use it, or we would use it as a civilian, is if you have a cell phone and, every time those push notifications on your phone and things so every time you're in the vicinity of that Starbucks, let's say, you might get a text that says, hey, 10% off your order or whatever. Well, they can use this as essentially reverse location. So it's a bit with the triangulation. It's not always super exact or, within a larger radius. This is more like they continue to say, oh man,
I think
they're
they
so
kind of,
they
I
make
think
it
they're kind of
sound like they're
bullshitting us
almost
on that
seeing
too.
if not only we're
I think they're also I think they bullshit us that because with the geo-tracking, I've done a lot of research into geo-tracking just because I've used the software. But dude, if somebody with a cell phone walks into, let's say that you're sitting at a Walmart, you're sitting at the red light in front of a Walmart, your Facebook ads will have fucking Walmart ads on it because it knows that you're right next to the Walmart. I geo-track that. They used to use geo-tracking. I paid $2,000 a month for a little while. The technology is absolutely frightening. And I don't think that we actually understand how accurate that information is. And I don't know how much access law enforcement gets to geotracking at this point. I don't know. Because it is kind of like rather new. I think at least, I mean, it's probably not new to law enforcement, but it's all new to us, right? The technology. But I think it's really, really, really scary about how these phones can track us. And I think that these phones get a lot closer than we think. And I bet you that law enforcement, if law enforcement had, I don't think that these companies are going to give law enforcement that information, because then it would get out to the public about how exact that they can really pinpoint where you're at all the time. I don't think big tech it cooperates with law enforcement near as much as we'd like to think that they could. I think they don't give us the right answer. I think that they're like, oh, well, our triangulation is within 20 miles. I bet you there's technology out there that'll tell you exactly where that guy was, exactly when he was out there with that geo-tracking shit. I mean, it happens. It'll work inside your gym. Like, your phone knows when you're inside your gym working out. Are you still there?
Yeah. So, and we'll start wrapping this up, but at 11:30 that night, Charlie started texting her little brother, Justin, to say that she was acting erratic. Then he texted Alexa, her daughter, her 16-year-old daughter, and said that he had left the home and asked how her mom was doing. And she said, oh, it's crazy. Something like, she's talking weird. It's scary. Is that this? Did he use her phone to him back and forth? On one, we still don't know where it called. Now, keep that in mind. Just a thought. There is a thought theory on potentially a hitman type situation. He did have that money. I don't think he necessarily did that. I think if anything, he would have gotten heated in the moment, and he had no motive that we can think of. He had the means. He had the handgun there and in the house, at the bedside table. He had the opportunity. He lived there with them or financially attached to these daughters.
Right.
And the smoking gun was kind of that day, the day they were killed, Mom, Nicole, had received an email from an apartment complex 6 miles away that said, hey, just checking in on your apartment search. We do, in fact, have a 3-bedroom floor plan like you wanted during your prospective move-in dates. We can't wait to hear back from you.
Right. I mean, they said that she was acting
she
normal.
evidently had been planning to leave.
They said she was acting normal like all day. They said that she was acting normal all day. And then all of a sudden she's like had this erratic until that night. And so, kind of where I'm leaning, just to play devil's advocate as a law enforcement officer, right? Like, we're going to go like only on evidence. There's a lot of drugs and a lot of alcohol that can make you act like really erratic and crazy. And we already know that she has a problem with alcohol. We know that this guy's got a problem with alcohol too. I'm not trying to take this guy's side, but if we're going to look at the evidence, again, the toxicology report, I mean, the fact that they're not releasing the toxicology report is probably because it doesn't look good for her, and it's not going to help her case. And so they're not, you know what I'm saying? Like,
maybe I hear you.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I don't see them making this call. Somebody else made a comment in here. It says, do they generally investigate suicide with as much intensity as they do murder suicide? I mean, I can't speak for other agencies, and I don't know how, but I know that like Texas, a lot of Texas has some pretty advanced law enforcement. And again, I don't know where this took place, but I mean, most cities, I mean, I would say most, but there's a lot of big towns, right? San Antonio, Austin. And, I know even as far as Austin, I mean,
It's outside
Austin
of San Antonio.
Yeah. And so they're going to probably have access to some pretty good training again, it's hard for me to say, because I mean, like, North Carolina, Raleigh's great, but then you can go right down the road to Selma, who, probably has only investigated 2 murders in the last 20 years. So, I don't know. I can't really speak to all I can say is for Raleigh, that if it's a suicide, I mean, they're gonna go through everything until they figure out that it's a suicide. They're gonna look at all of the evidence, and anytime that something doesn't
Well, it's
line up
still a
right,
death.
right,
So
they're going to explore that. They're going to question everybody. They're going to question the neighbors, even if it's like an apparent suicide. I mean, they're still going to treat it like it's a crime scene. If there's videos,
Right.
they're going to watch it. If there's neighbors shit, they're going to watch it. They're going to see because I mean, they want to piece together the whole suicide. They want to piece together what time did this person come home? What time did this person commit suicide? How do they commit suicide? Where do they get access to the
Right.
gun? It's not just like they walk in and go, damn, shot himself. Got him. That's tragic. And they walk out. No, I mean, they want to know, where do they get the gun? What's the gun registered? There's a lot that goes into it, man. The reports, I mean,
Yeah.
so I don't know.
I mean,
Again,
I
can't
just
speak
think
for
that the
this
concern
department.
was that, sorry. I was just going to say, I think that the concern was that with her getting that email that day from that apartment complex, easily could just be coincidence, but we already know that he was very controlling and very, told her essentially when she could be wherever she was home. And so the thought behind and cited because he saw that's exactly what it looks like she was planning to do. Then maybe he lost it, and
And what if
the rest happened.
what if she was of clear mind and she was like, this is toxic, this isn't working. I've been fighting with this guy for months now. We've had this fallout in Galveston. He stole my phone, just toxic, right? Like, I don't like putting up with his shit. I'm a slave to this thing, and in her right mind, she's like, I'm getting an apartment, I'm moving out, and I'm still gonna get my kid to this America's Got Talent. Everything's gonna go well. He's gone. They have they have that big giant fight and they're fucking pissed. And he goes out to mom's house and she gets into that bottle at that 1.5 liter of Pinot Grigio, probably Cavit Pinot Grigio. She gets into that. She starts hammering down on the bottle of Cavit Pinot and loses her fucking mind and then pulls out a gun. And, drugs and alcohol are a shitty thing. And they can make you do some stupid shit. And then she's like, fuck it, dude. Like, in this not right mind of being completely gone and obliviated, I'm losing everything. I'm definitely not going to America's Got Talent because I'm fucking plastered. I'm a terrible mom. We're going to be poor. We don't have any money. I'm losing my job. Life isn't what I've portrayed it to be on Instagram. I'm not making as much money selling these wristwatches as everybody would like to believe I am. And living in a mansion sucks. And I've already been married 4 times. That's, I'm not saying that that's what she wanted to be like, but once she gets, 1.5 liters into that booze, I mean, blackout drunk's pretty scary shit.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that it can't or your brain chemistry and your behavior. Kids just seems like without like other mental issues going on, which nothing really indicates that she had, it's one thing if she for herself, but killing the kids. And we've talked about murder suicide doesn't seem to play, but I mean, who's to say?
Yeah,
I
because
don't know.
we don't know
That's
this
depressing.
girl. We can only go off of what her friends say and what they don't say. But like, we all know some toxic people. Like we know what toxic people are like, and then we know what their friends that are on their side are going to take their side, and and again, that's why I say it's like it's us as internet sleuths or podcasters. A lot of what we do, a lot of the emotion that we come from what the documentaries tell us to think or make us feel. Anytime that somebody is working on a case of these documentaries that think or have a hunch, remember, they're working off a hunch, they're going to paint the picture to make their hunch appear right, not by malice, but because that's just natural, right? Like, I have a hunch, this is what I feel, and it doesn't add up. And they're going to paint this picture to sell it to you that it doesn't add up. Whereas I think the law enforcement officers on the ground go into it with zero emotion. They don't have any real stake in the game. They're more often than not looking at the evidence that's before them, and then they put the puzzle together. And when the puzzle shows that it was a murder suicide, that's what they come out with. Now, they could be completely wrong for sure. And I think it is interesting that the case is considered open. I don't know what influences. I don't know what influences the FBI has into reopening a case. I don't really have a lot of stock in the FBI when it comes to murder investigations. I'd say, is the FBI better than Selma, North Carolina at a murder investigation? Sure. Do I think the FBI is better at a murder investigation than Raleigh, North Carolina? I mean, if I had to put money down and I wasn't able to ask any questions, I'd probably put my money on Raleigh, to be honest with you. Because the homicide unit has got a pretty stellar record. So I don't know. That's a crazy case, though. I wonder if we're going to get any breakthroughs. Like, with the Delphi case, I never would have thought Peggy and what's his name would ever be connected with the Delphi case, and I don't think any of us internet people ever put that together.
So weird. And they've not specified again. They did make sure to say that they're not saying it's the same suspect, but there was evidence that they have determined to, and that's about as then. So I don't know. My interest is peaked on that one. That blows my mind. So,
I'll have to stay up with it. Well, guys, listen, I promise next week. I promise next week that Andrea's internet will be fixed by next week. We do have equipment. It is coming. It will be at her house by next week. We do hear you guys. We know that it's frustrating. It's frustrating for us too, because Andrea puts a lot of work into these shows, a lot of time and a lot of research. And everybody puts a lot of time and research in this. So nobody wants to see the show become transformer-ish as it did tonight. And we apologize for that, but there is new equipment coming. So please stay with us. And that's all thanks to all the support that you guys have done for our advertisers, all the support from our paid YouTube, and all the support from our Patreon. That has allowed us to get new equipment across the board for not just Andrea, but other members on the team, that we can really grow this and make sure that everything runs properly. So I think going further next week, you guys are going to see a lot better interwebs and a lot better quality content. Although I will say your camera looks really great tonight.
Oh, good. Well,
but our delay is
20
seconds.
The meet and greet that between John did these fun things. Aren't those fun?
What she's referring to, because she's paused.
TJR printed out.
Oh, there she goes. All the members that did the $10 subscription to the Patreon, which it blows my mind that you guys are doing that. And there's over a dozen. I mean, it's only $3.99 to be on the Patreon, and there's a $10 membership as well. And so many people, I thought nobody would do the $10 membership. And a lot of you guys have done that. The $10 members are getting a free digital copy of my book before it's released. That you guys will get that book. You guys are also going to get a custom bookmarker that was made, a custom bookmark that was made by Jonathan Bates from Com Center. And then also those things that TJR printed off with John's art on it. Those are going to get signed and then mailed to you guys. So those are kind of the perks that you get for being a $10 member. And for the other Patreon members and YouTube members, you guys are going to get a little envelope too with some stuff in it. It just won't be as cool as getting a digital copy of my book. So sorry, but thank you. So, yep. Guys, awesome. This has been another awesome episode.
I didn't know you were doing that, Eric. That's cool.
Yeah. Well, I didn't realize we were going to get so many $10 paid members. And then I was like, well, holy shit. I just knew that we were putting that on there. I didn't think anybody was going to actually do it. And then when he told me that there were like 13 or 14 people that signed up for the $10 thing, I was like, well, damn, I got to produce, man. I'm not just taking somebody's money. They've got to have some kind of value, extra value. So that's one thing that I thought of. And I said, I don't mind giving, if you're already paying $10 a month, you might as well get a free copy of the book before it ever comes out. And you'll get a personal email from me as well. And then of course the bookmarker. And then for the other Patreon and YouTube guys, we are going to get you out these little cards that TGR made. They're just a littler version of the bigger ones. So we just got to figure out how to get the whole team to sign those before we get those out. So, but they'll probably come out. I mean, you'll definitely get them before Christmas. It's just going to take a hot minute for us to get all these things signed from each individual.
We signed a lot at the meet and greet too.
Yeah, and I'll get those out first, but I don't think we signed as many as we have YouTube members and as we have Patreon members. So anyway, and then we have Last Road Wine Show that's coming very soon on our Patreon as well. So stand by for that. All right, guys. Well, yes, David J, you can get your digital bookmark and your digital book. So just hold tight for that. Will Cray, I still got to send you your skateboard as well. That's signed by everybody. I'll get that out here shortly as well. So, all right, guys, until next time, guns up, giddy up. Have a great night. And we'll see you guys next week. Or no, we'll see you tomorrow for last call.